Laphroaig single malt Scotch whiskey. This is the most medicinal of malts. Love it or hate it, said one of Laphroaig's advertising slogans. Like hospital gauze? Reminiscent of mouthwash or antiseptic? Phenolic? That is the whole point. That's the point. Sorry. The iodine-like seaweed character of Islay. Welcome to Drink in a Week. We're going to talk about a couple of most famous, infamous, biggest peated single malt Scotch whiskey distilleries. Laphroaig. I was just quoting Michael Jackson's Complete Guide to Single Malt Scotch. If you know anything about single malt Scotch whiskey, you are going to know about Laphroaig. Laphroaig, for me, is one of the, it was the first peated Scotch whiskey I ever drank. It is the first one that I enjoyed. It's the first with caution. They also have a very unique structure in the kind of history of peated Scotch whiskey and all whiskey in a whole lot of ways. I think when we're looking at the island of Islay, again, that's the one that produces most of this peat-influenced whiskey. We look at that island. For me, the big three would be Lagavulin, which right now has its biggest presence probably of all time, but it's been well known a long time. Big fans. Part of that is because of Nick Offerman and his influence on drinking it on the Parks and Rec show, and then he also has become a spokesperson for it and has had some limited editions. We're going to get to those with his name on it. We'll get to those in a bit. We don't have all of them, but we'll get to Lagavulin soon. The second one in my big three is Ardbeg, which we'll also talk about. And then the third is Laphroaig. Now, there are other companies that we can talk about that make peated whiskey, and we will bring some of them up. But for me, those are the three that we see the most and hear about the most, and maybe are kind of in culture. We see advertising for it, blah, blah, blah. The other thing is interesting is Laphroaig has seemed to make a little bit of a jump in terms of advertising and things of that note. They've seen the thing of hiring on Nick Offerman was brought on at Lagavulin. I mean, I don't know about an employee, but doing ads and doing limited editions. We've seen Harrison Ford for Glenmorangie, Speyside single malt Scotch whiskey. And then in recent weeks, I think this ad campaign just happened last month, we see Willem Dafoe, Willem Dafoe doing some ads. Very crazy ads, very strange ads. That's his kind of bread and butter. Or maybe you could say smoke and seaweed. So he brings his special edge to it. The kind of notable thing about Laphroaig for me is when we look at Laphroaig and we look at maybe Ardbeg, we can get the best examples of these different kind of peat levels. We have super seaweedy, briny, and iodine flavors, and then, super seaweedy and briny flavors, and then we have the more iodine and medicinal side that we can talk about a little bit. Sometimes Laphroaig kind of straddles that to my taste. I think they go a little bit into the medicinal side and also a little bit on the sweeter side than Ardbeg does. Lagavulin kind of comes in the middle with something very different, and we like them all. I don't know if Michelle likes Laphroaig or Ardbeg at all, but I know that she's liked some Lagavulins. Okay, all right. That was just kind of get rolling along here now. We're just kind of settling in here. It was a long day, but the weather now finally feels like it can be. We can drink some peated Scotch whiskey, right, Michelle? Mm-hmm. And I'm going to bring you a couple of them. One is the what used to be the middle of their core range and pretty much the exemplar for everything you find. That was the 10-year-old. Okay, you could go out. Laphroaig 10 is kind of like Ardbeg 10 or Springbank 10. You can go higher, you can go older, you can go more expensive, you can go more exclusive, you could go with a higher ABV, but if you just want to get a real good example of what this whiskey is, Laphroaig 10 has always been good. It's changed a little bit over the years. The other one I'm going to bring to you is a very interesting one. I'm going to bring you we're getting low on this. We're going to talk about Laphroaig 18. Now, Laphroaig 18 was discontinued in 2016. Okay, just for I guess they were just lack of supply of that 18-year-old whiskey with that kind of blend that they do. When I say blend, don't get scared off. It's single malt Scotch whiskey, but we'll talk about that later. And then it has only been returned in 2024, and I don't know if that was kind of just a limited release or what, but it's not on the website right now. I did look, and it looks like you can get some current versions of it, but it's not on their website. And I looked on our biggest retailer here in Chicagoland, Vinnie's, and the Laphroaig 18 is not on there as well. I have it because I have this little bottle here of a sample that buddy was Dean of Allocations. And if you went to college with this gentleman, this fine gentleman, that's his writing. You know that writing. Almost look at that, all right? You put that on that label. That's the kind of stuff. If I wrote that on that little label, well, you wouldn't be able to read it. But this is it. This is Laphroaig 18. He gave me a nice big, what was this, I forget how much this was, 140 milliliters, I think. Gave that to me. We're pretty much full. We've enjoyed it. It's one of my favorite peated whiskeys around, okay? But it's hard to find. So let's talk about Laphroaig just a little bit more. We're talking about peated whiskey. This one thing that's interesting about Laphroaig is we don't have a lot of information, and the other thing that's a little bit strange is that they kind of toy with the ABVs on different bottlings. Now, there are many whiskeys that if you're buying it in Scotland, you're going to get it at 40% ABV, and here you're going to get it a little higher, 43, 46. But it's kind of all over the map sometimes as to what that ABV is. This one, which we've had a while, it's getting close to the end, but this Laphroaig 10, very simple, and 43% ABV on this one. The one other thing you're going to notice is we're going to read the label, and if I know my labels, I don't see that here. Sorry. Laphroaig, pronounced Laphroaig. La, F-R-O-Y-G. Okay, so frog with a Y in the middle for no apparent reason, right? That's just a nice little, this bottle is, if you're a whiskey fan and you want to get your first peated whiskey, get this and you're going to be happy. I have better suggestions in terms of price these days, but this is wonderful. What we know about Laphroaig. One, they have their own peat supply. They actually do their own harvesting. And at one point, you could join their whiskey club, and I apparently, and it's something special, I just bought that bottle, but then I went online and really nerded out and got it. I have a little plot of land at the next to the distillery in the peat bog. I'm not special. Many people did that because they just basically went online and applied for it. So I have a little plot of land, but there was a nice little PDF that they sent me with my coordinates and all that kind of fun stuff. The other thing that's interesting is it's a little tough sometimes to know what's going on in this bottle because they don't make any bones about the fact that even though this is Laphroaig, the statement on that is we don't know what they're aging in. Okay, yes, there are some that are big high mixture of Scotch, ex-sherry cask influence, but even in both these bottlings, from my knowledge and from what I'm tasting, there are some ex-bourbon casks in here and ex-sherry casks in here. Okay, so that's what I meant by blend. So again, this is still all made by Laphroaig, but in any larger facility, and just all facilities, just keep in mind, it's not always just one batch that they are blending together, and that's what goes in the bottle. They aged some of their spirit in ex-bourbon casks, and that has to be at least 10 years or 18 years here. Then the same thing with maybe some sherry casks. So it's not finished, it's just that's what they're doing. So ex-sherry casks, some goes in there, ex-bourbon casks, some goes in there, and then they blend that together. Okay, that's what's happening here. And the taste is what makes it a little different from Ardbeg, because I believe that the Ardbeg 10 and some others are only the ex-bourbon. Now, if I'm wrong on that, then I am. Okay. Again, they don't put this stuff on the bottle, but in terms of taste, you can taste that. So, if anything, if you are wanting to go into a peat experience, but you still want to have a little bit of sweetness in there, maybe Laphroaig is the direction to go. I think we can agree that Lagavulin has that in there as well, right? Kind of like a little bit of sweetness in there, and then in some of the younger ones, like very fruity as well. What is this? Stink fruit? This is not stink fruit. What is this? Wow. This is kind of like a really great fruit. You did it again. Michelle, you done it. You hired the fruit maker. I did that. I used that line once before. You hand me a piece of food that really goes well with this. This is really good. Star fruit. What is it also called? Star fruit. This is really a perfect thing to eat with this, because there's a little bit of funkiness in here, right? A little bit of the fibrous, earthy vibe, but then there's a little sweet note, kind of like a pear, but then there's also kind of a cucumber. I mean, it's partially the skin, but a cucumber, that kind of fibrous, really full of water kind of flavor. I think I'm getting fruity over here. I think I'm like better at describing fruits as well, huh? All right. Back to single malt Scotch whiskey. Let's talk about the Laphroaig 10. Pull it up. 43%. As I said, there is no information here if this is non-chill filtered. Kind of tough to understand. I don't have the bottle for. I don't have the actual bottle or the label for the 18, so we don't know. Although I think, if I remember right, that is not chill filtered. Don't know about the color. What's interesting? Let me see one that I know is colored. You know what? Unfortunately, I don't really buy all that many that I know are full of colors. I don't have it handy. But if you look, you turn your whiskey around, and you see a little two-word German. I can't remember, but a couple of German words there on the back of your label on the Scotch, and you're like, what does that mean? That must be something really cool. No, it's because in the German market you have to tell if you have added color to it. So just keep that in mind. I would have pulled one up here, but I've kind of gotten rid of a lot. Not gotten rid of, we finished, and then most of the stuff I buy, hopefully, there's no color in it. There you go. All right, the 10 on the nose. Dark wood, not a ton of Zapow peat nose like an Ardbeg. Zapow peat nose, who's a great pitcher for the Red Sox, I believe. On a slower, bigger one, get a little bit of barbecue sauce, bacon. It's not fruity, but there's like a grilled fruit note in there. But there's also fennel, a little bit of earthiness, sage, mint, seaweed on the taste. There is some iodine. There is some flinty, kind of like lit match flavors on there. That obviously is coming from the peat. But I implore you, when you're on your whiskey journey, especially when you are challenged, if you are this is not Malort. We don't try to kick it back and prove that we can drink it. Why would you spend this kind of money on something like this and do that? No, that's not what this is about. What this is about is hold the flavor on your tongue longer, and you are going to get so much more. Again, I'm going to do it again. Leathery, grilled fruits again, more seaweed, but there is a medicinal flavor that I like. I don't understand it. A little bit of a burnt flavor. It's just such a unique flavor. And then on the finish, we probably get our biggest hint of peat. We also get our biggest hint of the sherry cask influence. Okay, I think before I could discern that in peated whiskey, that sherry cask influence, I didn't really know what was going on with there. It just tasted like old wood for me. Now that I've had more sherry influence both peated and non-peated whiskey, you can really tell the difference. And like I said, let me be clear that I did mean peated and non-peated whiskey. I can get that flavor. When you drink a peated whiskey that has a blend of sherry cask or maybe a heavy sherry finish, which Laphroaig also has, and then you drink just an ex-bourbon peat, you can really tell the difference on what that does. And it kind of mellows out the peat note a little bit, but it also gives it a sweeter flavor under there. And there's just this hint of mesquite or barbecue sauce that I just don't get in Ardbeg, which is fine. And I think if you asked me normally day to day, I haven't drunk a lot of either in a while, I would say my favorites are actually Ardbeg 10 of the two between Ardbeg and Laphroaig. But this is really nice, really indicative of that. The other thing that's really neat about this is recommending two things. Laphroaig, I never would recommend chilling a glass for single malt Scotch whiskey, but I do know that try to maybe just make sure you're drinking this at a lower room temperature. And maybe if you touch the glass and it feels a little cold, maybe instead of, like, don't put it in the fridge because it's probably going to get some condensation on it when you start pouring. But maybe leave your glass on this is nuts, but leave it on like a marble counter or something like that, just so that it seems to move along just nicer in that kind of, with a little bit of like a cold glass. Okay, definitely don't order this at one of my the places that I play at that serve you whiskey in a warm glass. That would suck. Like, it's just really indicative peated Scotch whiskey. I mean, it's the reason why it's so popular. Is it just has that simplistic label, all that. Like everything right now, single malt Scotch whiskey. This is owned by Beam Suntory, and they are one of them that seem like they're jacking up prices a little bit in a kind of counter tariff move or something of that nature. If that makes any sense, or they're having to pay these tariffs, so, you know, or we're having to, so blah 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 blah, bing bing bing, blah blah blah. The prices have gone up a little bit on many Scotch whiskey brands. However, there are some other ones that are the younger range called Select. Okay, Select is now in the price range where Laphroaig 10 used to be. You know what? Just give me a second. I hope this doesn't crash my thing. I want to see what the price is of Laphroaig 10 right now, because I don't want to talk out of turn, and I'll tell you if, in my estimation, you might think it's all too much, but let me see if. So right now this is at $64.99. I remember it being about $10 cheaper when I bought it. It was not. It was one of the 10s that was not up at $60. That's a little too much for right now. And in a future video, I'm going to give you some recommendations on some things to buy if you can't spend that kind of money on peated whiskey. But for right now, I'd say that's as good as you're going to do. You're going to see some other no age statement whiskeys like the Select. I don't know if the Triple Wood is cheaper than this or not. And I don't know. I haven't really had them, so I don't want to speak on them. They don't get very good reviews. Let me just say it that way. Okay. This is great. If you can get the 10 at cask strength, that is a real belter. I've only had it out once Good stuff there. Now the 18. Now the 18, okay, we should expect, this is 18 and this was at least produced before 2016. So this has been, you know, you don't get age in a cask, but this has been transferred to a small little bottle, and you know, so it's going to have lost maybe a little zing. Who knows? Maybe not. On the nose, you would still know this is a peated note, but this is some of this is spent 18 years in a sherry cask. Okay, if my nose tells me correctly, so it's going to mellow the peat vibes a little bit. Okay, the longer peated whiskey stays in the cask, the more of that peat kind of fades a little bit. This is bottled at 48%, and you can—that's where you really get the difference. So much more flavor. It is not that different from this, except that all the flavors are heightened a little bit in terms of the non-peated elements. So there's a little bit more sherry cask influence. There's a little bit more of a fruity flavor, a little bit more of a typical vanilla ex-bourbon cask flavor. It's good. I remember drinking this before, and it really blew me away. I've had a lot more peated whiskey since that. This still remains a favorite. The only thing for me is if you're looking for that real punchy peated seaweed vibe, and you're debating on this, or maybe even just regular Lagavulin 16. Now it's a little bit more. Lagavulin tastes more of that nature. This. It's very, very tasty. But it's kind of, it almost reminds you a little bit like it's trying to crowd please a little bit. But it's very, very tasty. The only difference that I would get here is there's a little bit more, well, there's just going to be more cask influence. There's a little more sunflower, a little more of a vanilla note. There's that little vanilla zing that we get sometimes from an ex-bourbon cask. I was talking about sherry, but the bourbon cask comes through here. This is really, really, really refined stuff, and as much as I really like it, I'm gonna give it a high score. I don't know that it would be one that I'd be like, oh, you got to reach out, you got to search this one out and see if there are still any bottles from the last time they put this together. And like I said, I read it, I understood it looked like there are new bottlings available of 18. But it's not on the website anymore. Like I said, Laphroaig does a lot of weird things where they have something out and it goes away and comes back and blah blah blah, and then you have these other things, and then you have these other special names that are different kind of aging and stuff. It's a little bit of a confusing show there. All right, a smoke show. No, not a smoke show. This is smoke. A smoke show. Really good stuff. I love it. I love this stuff. Laphroaig 10. 8 point. It just seems so weird. What's harder for me about giving scores is I don't get supplies from anybody, especially now. Nobody's giving me anything or giving me any. I'm only buying stuff that I'm pretty sure I know I'm going to like, and that's even in this case. So that's why a lot of my scores are in that. 8 is, yeah, this is good. I don't know that I'll buy it again. Anything above that, I'm starting to talk about, yeah, this is recommended. So it's kind of hard. I'm going to give Laphroaig 10 now on that tasting, which I actually enjoyed a little better than the last time I had it. You know what I should do, though? While I'm still talking, these last couple of drops of these last couple, let me just put a very, very minute drop of water in there. Just one. That's all I had in there. Give them just a little bit of a roll, all right, and try them. But like I said, these are just wonderful exemplars of peated Scotch whiskey. Are they the best? No. Water in the 10 actually brings out a little bit more of the kind of smoke and ashy flavors. Interesting. Kind of tones down the medicinal side. And the 18 will finish this off. If I'm able to nuance it that much, mixing two together and not really getting a good rinse. I would say that for both of them. It was interesting. So if you drink a peated Scotch whiskey, especially if it's above, this one is at 43, this one is at 48, and you're not feeling like it's getting smoky enough for you, maybe add a drop or two of water. Sometimes I'll see, like, Ralphie, who's a great reviewer, he'll add like a teaspoon, and I'm like, I don't know how, but he knows what he's doing. 1,000+ videos on this stuff. You're going to learn something. And now I'm wearing a hat that he kind of wears, so now I feel kind of like I'm getting a little imposter syndrome, a little impeter syndrome. Cool. So I brought you a big name here. I didn't really give you. I'm going to say 8.2 on this because I'm kind of liking it a little bit more. The 18, I'm going to give an 8.4 because of 8.4. Just because it is an 18-year whiskey, it's really, really, really competent whiskey. 18 years on here, though. However, it looks like they're trying to be a little crowd pleasing. If you're expecting, boy, if I've had 10 Laphroaig and it's really, really fiery and smoky, the 18 has to just tear my head up. No, that's not this at all. Okay. Which is interesting. One final thing on the peat, we've already talked about how the casks and kind of influence the flavor of the peat. The other thing to keep in mind, again, and we've talked about this, is that companies, especially these old stalwarts, started putting out younger whiskeys. Okay, Laphroaig did it with an 8-year-old. Lagavulin did it with an 8-year-old. Ardbeg did it with a Wee Beastie 5, both of which we're going to bring to you soon. Laphroaig didn't really do that, but then they put out these no age statements that had these very hard to pronounce Gaelic names that were kind of younger. They make that for the kind of wild side, kind of, woohoo, party whiskey in a weird way. Okay, it was companies that were very much leather patch. On the elbows, kind of what I like to call it, again, study whiskeys. Not that you have to study them, that's what you have in your study when you're reading some old British, novel or history book or something like that. And they try to kind of young it up a little bit, do one for the kids, you know what I mean? And a lot of those have succeeded. What I mean by that is that's when you see young age state, no age statement whiskeys, and if that's your game, that's the one thing you want to try, go for it. But if you're new to peated whiskey, I think you really should go with a kind of a standard bearer. Laphroaig 10 would be a good example of it. Now, after saying that, what I'm going to do is my next couple are going to be talking about some younger. I'm going to talk about. Laphroaig again, which is a brand new, thanks to Neil for hipping me to that distillery. We're going to talk about that distillery again. That was my kind of preview video. It says Laphroaig is what it looks like, but Laphroaig. We're going to talk about Kilchoman, and we're going to talk about Laphroaig, which is a company, or a distillery, the Peatober distillery, on the, I'm blanking, that does peated whiskey. But they're smaller companies, and I'm going to point out if these price tags that I'm talking to you about, not that they're inexpensive, but just if you want to go with something a smaller company, checking out something a little different, newer ideas, if not actual distilleries, that's what I'm going to bring to you next. So I might even kind of couple up a couple of them. Kilchoman and Laphroaig are really nice to put together because they both have kind of like a standard, mostly ex-bourbon one, and they have a then one that's influenced by in Kilchoman's side, a real heavily sherried one, and on Laphroaig's one, a really heavily port finish or something. Rioja cask finish. So we'll be able to talk. So I might put those two together. But there you go. Okay, I'm trying to give you some big old, again, stalwarts that we've all heard about, and then I'm trying to go with some ones that maybe you haven't heard about with it, and a couple other ones in between. All right, folks, have a lot of fun. I will see you soon. I don't know when. If you're going to be battling the king, king. Be safe out there. All right. I don't even have a joke here at the end. All right. Just remember when he was talking about him, he said the Scottish. You want to